Did you know Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was once paid just $78 a month while the world clamored for his music? Or that his legendary 1968 comeback performance almost ended up being a cheesy Christmas special featuring him singing carols? And imagine this, over 1 billion people supposedly tuned in to watch one of his concerts live via satellite, a technology gamble that could have ended in global embarrassment. Number 5. Broadcasting Aloha from Hawaii via satellite, a global gamble. Okay, picture this. It's January 1973. Elvis is Huge, but rock music is changing. Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, psychedelic sounds are everywhere. Elvis needs something massive, something unprecedented to keep his global icon status blazing bright. Colonel Tom Parker, his manager, known for his Carnival Barker-style promotion, lands on an idea almost as audacious as the moon landing just a few years earlier. Broadcast an Elvis concert live around the world using satellites since 1973. This wasn't like streaming on YouTube today. This was cutting-edge, wildly expensive, and incredibly risky technology for entertainment. Most people didn't even have color TVs yet in some parts of the world. The plan was to beam the show live to audiences across Asia and Oceania, and then show a delayed, edited version in Europe and North America later. The sheer logistics were mind-boggling. The concert was set for the Honolulu International Center Arena, now the Neil S. Blaisdell Center. It needed specialized broadcast equipment, intricate satellite links, coordination across multiple time zones, and cooperation from TV networks globally. The cost? Reports suggest around $2,500,000, an astronomical sum for a single television special back then. That's like over $16 million in today's money. If just one crucial satellite link failed, or if the complex switching went wrong, millions could be staring at a blank screen or technical glitches. Disaster loomed large. What if the technology worked, but the audience just wasn't there? Parker was betting the bank, or rather RCA Records and Elvis's future earnings, that the idea of seeing Elvis live via satellite would be enough to capture a massive global audience. They hyped it as a worldwide event, aiming for the largest entertainment audience in history at that point. Some estimates thrown around suggested a potential audience of 1 to 1.5 billion people, though verifying exact numbers across so many countries and time zones in 1973 is practically impossible. The claim itself was part of the spectacle. Think about the pressure on Elvis. He wasn't just performing for the few thousand people in the arena. He was performing for potentially hundreds of millions simultaneously across the Pacific, and eventually for countless more. One wrong note, one forgotten lyric, one moment of looking tired or unwell could be magnified on a global scale like never before. He was decked out in one of his most famous jumpsuits, the white American Eagle, heavy, with embroidery and jewels adding to the spectacle, but also the physical demand under the hot lights. The set list was a mix of his classics, Hound Dog, Blue Suede Shoes, Love Me, newer hits, Burning Love, Suspicious Minds, Covers My Way, Something, and gospel numbers. How Great Thou Art! He had to deliver a performance that lived up to the colossal hype and the technological marvel of the broadcast itself. The concert took place on January 14, 1973. A rehearsal show was taped on January 12th as a backup, just in case. The live broadcast went out as planned to countries like Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, the Philippines, Australia, and New Zealand. The delayed broadcast in the US happened on April 4, 1973 on NBC, preempting popular shows and drawing huge ratings. The accompanying double album, Aloha from Hawaii, via satellite, was rushed into stores just weeks after the concert. It flew to the top of the charts in the US and elsewhere. The sheer scale of the event, the technological first, the massive claimed audience, it was a Parker P.T. Barnum-esque promotion brought to life. It cemented Elvis's image as a global superstar capable of commanding a worldwide stage, even as musical tastes continue to evolve around him. But the risk was immense. A technical snafu or a lackluster performance could have made him a global laughingstock and signaled that the king was truly out of touch. It was a high-wire act performed on a satellite beam. Number 4. The Vegas Residencies, Glitter Gulch, or Golden Handcuffs. Fast forward from the raw energy of the '68 comeback special. Elvis is back on top, relevant again. But what's the next move? Touring, Goring. More innovative records. Colonel Parker had another idea, one that seemed almost counterintuitive for a rock and roll rebel: Las Vegas. In 1969, Vegas wasn't the rock and roll hotspot it can be today. It was more associated with crooners like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, cabaret acts, comedians, entertainers often perceived as being in the twilight of their careers, settling into comfortable, lucrative nostalgia gigs. For Elvis, the man who shook up the establishment, to plant his flag in Vegas, it felt different. Risky, even. Would this make him seem like a museum piece? Just another act for the tourists between hands of blackjack? The deal Parker struck with the brand new International Hotel, later the Las Vegas Hilton, now the Westgate Las Vegas, was huge. It reportedly started with a 4-week engagement in the summer of 1969, paying Elvis a stunning amount of money per week. This wasn't just a few shows, it was a residency. Night after night, sometimes 2 shows a night, in the same showroom. The first engagement was a massive success. Elvis, backed by the TCB Band and 2 gospel groups, the Imperials and the Sweet Inspirations, put on electrifying shows. He was energetic, me-doc, looked great, and sang powerfully. The Vegas shows became the hot ticket. Critics raved, audiences screamed, and the hotel couldn't have been happier. So, Parker doubled down. And then tripled down. Elvis signed longer and longer contracts, committing him to grueling stints in Vegas, usually twice a year, typically February and August, September, for weeks at a time. The money was phenomenal, astronomical even. It provided incredible financial security. It also meant Elvis didn't have to deal with the constant travel of traditional touring. Parker loved it because it centralized the operation, easier to control, easier to manage the deals. But here's the risk. Did this long-term commitment stifle Elvis creatively? Playing the same room, often to the same type of audience, high rollers, tourists, night after night, year after year, could that lead to stagnation? While the set lists did change over the years, the format became somewhat predictable. The jumpsuits got more elaborate, the entrances more dramatic, the band arrangements sometimes bigger, but the core structure remained. Did it isolate him? Instead of feeding off the energy of different crowds in different cities, he was largely confined to the Vegas bubble and occasional short tours. Did performing 2 shows a night week after week under demanding contracts contribute to the physical and mental toll that became apparent in later years? The sheer physical exertion of those high-energy shows, combined with the late hours and the pressure, was immense. Furthermore, did the Vegas image ultimately limit his perception? While the early Vegas years were triumphant, did the later years, with the increasingly outlandish jumpsuits and sometimes erratic performances, reinforce the idea for some that he was trapped in a glitzy cage, disconnected from the evolving music scene? He became synonymous with Vegas, for better or worse. The Vegas residencies were undeniably a huge financial success and initially a massive artistic comeback reinforcement. They redefined what a Vegas headliner could be and brought rock and roll energy to the Strip in an unprecedented way. But the risk was trading creative evolution and broader connection for security and spectacle, locking the king into a demanding, potentially isolating golden handcuff situation in the desert. It was a commitment that shaped the entire final act of his career. Number 3. Trading the recording studio for the Hollywood soundstage. Okay, let's rewind to 1960. Elvis is back from the army. He's still the biggest name in music, hands down. He'd conquered the world with raw rock and roll provocative performances and genuine musical innovation blending country, blues, and gospel. He just served his country, earning respect even from former critics. The world was his oyster. What does he do? He makes GI Blues. Now, GI Blues, the movie and its soundtrack, were hugely successful. The album stayed at number 1 for weeks, but it signaled a major shift in strategy, heavily influenced by Colonel Parker. Parker saw movies as a more controllable, less demanding, and potentially more lucrative long-term plan than relentless touring and cutting-edge recording. Make a movie. Release a soundtrack album filled with songs from the movie. Rinse, repeat. It was a formula. And boy, did they stick to the formula? Throughout the 1960s, Elvis starred in a staggering 27 movies. That's almost 3 movies a year. Titles like Blue Hawaii, Fun in Acapulco, Kissin' Cousin's Girl, Happy, Harem Scarum, Paradise, Hawaiian Style, Spin Out, Clambake. The list goes on. The risk. Elvis, the musical innovator, the raw talent who changed popular culture, was increasingly becoming a movie commodity. The films themselves became notoriously formulaic. Elvis plays a charming character, race car driver, photographer, boat captain, pilot, rodeo rider, etc., goes to an exotic or not-so-exotic location, gets into some light-hearted trouble, sings a bunch of songs often totally unrelated to the plot, and gets the girl some light-hearted trouble, sings a bunch of songs often totally unrelated. The music tied to these films often suffered dramatically. Instead of working with top songwriters and musicians in Nashville or Memphis to push musical boundaries, Elvis was often recording songs specifically written to fit flimsy movie plots. Think songs like Do the Clam, Yoga is as Yoga does, There's No Room to Rumba in a Sports Car, or Song of the Shrimp. While some movie soundtracks produced genuine hits like Can't Help Falling in Love from Blue Hawaii or Return to Sender from Girls, 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 many were filled with material that felt lightweight, silly, and disposable compared to his 50s output or even his immediate post-Army non-soundtrack singles like It's Now or Never or Are You Lonesome Tonight. Elvis himself reportedly grew increasingly frustrated and disillusioned with the quality of the movies and the songs he was asked to sing. He had aspirations of being a serious actor, citing influences like James Dean and Marlon Brando. He showed genuine promise in earlier, grittier films like Jailhouse Rock, 1957, and King Creole, 1958. But the Parker formula prioritized quantity and quick profits over artistic quality. This relentless focus on movies meant Elvis largely disappeared from live performing for almost 8 years, from his 1961 Pearl Harbor benefit concert until the '68 comeback special. He wasn't touring, he wasn't interacting with live audiences outside of movie premieres, and his connection to the pulse of rock music, which was undergoing massive changes with the British invasion, Motown, folk rock, and psychedelia seemed to fray. His record sales, while often initially strong due to the movie tie-in, saw singles struggling to reach the top 10, let alone #1 by the mid-60s. The risk was huge, alienating his original music, fans becoming irrelevant in a rapidly changing music landscape, sacrificing his artistic integrity and potential for the sake of a safe, profitable movie-making machine. It was a gamble that paid off financially in the short term, but cost him years of musical development and nearly relegated him to cinematic nostalgia before he dramatically reversed course. He essentially put his rock and roll crown in storage to become a Hollywood leading man in increasingly fluffy fare. Number 2. The '68 comeback special, All or Nothing in Black Leather. Imagine it's 1968. The Beatles released Sgt. Pepper the year before. Jimi Hendrix is setting guitars on fire. The Rolling Stones are singing about street-fighting men. Music is loud, experimental, political, and reflecting turbulent times. And where is Elvis Presley, the guy who started it all? He's making movies, like Spoodway, co-starring Nancy Sinatra, and Stay Away, Joe. His last big hit single was years ago. To a whole generation coming of age, he might seem like a relic, a memory from their parents' era trapped in silly Hollywood musicals. His career is, arguably, stalling badly. Colonel Parker, sensing the need for something, negotiates a deal with NBC for a one-off television special, Parker's Vision. A wholesome, family-friendly Christmas show. Elvis singing carols, maybe wearing a festive sweater. Safe, predictable, and probably career suicide in the edgy climate of 1968. Enter Steve Binder, a young, ambitious television producer and director who had worked on shows featuring cutting-edge rock acts. Binder saw the potential for something much, much bigger. He saw the fire still burning in Elvis. He saw a chance not just to make a TV special, but to reunite a legend. The risk here was monumental, and it involved a clash of wills. Binder wanted to showcase the raw, vital Elvis, the rock and roller, the blues shouter. Parker wanted the safe, family entertainer. Elvis himself, tired of the movie grind and sensing this might be his last chance to reclaim his musical throne, had to choose which path to follow. Binder's idea was radical. Ditch the Christmas theme, though a closing ballad, If I Can Dream, written specifically for the show, provided an uplifting message relevant to the times, particularly after the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy earlier that year. Focus on Elvis's musical roots. Put him face-to-face with a live studio audience for intimate, unplugged style jam sessions. something largely unheard of on mainstream TV back then. And, crucially, put him back in black leather, reminiscent of his rebellious 50s image. Getting Parker to agree to this vision was a battle. Reports suggest Parker was furious about the direction, especially the intimate jam session segments, fearing they looked unprofessional or like a bordello. He fought Binder on creative decisions. But Binder, with Elvis's apparent backing, largely prevailed. The taping in Burbank, California, in June 1968 was intense. For the jam sessions, often called the sit-down segments, Elvis reunited with original band members Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana. He was visibly nervous at first, having not performed live for years, but quickly found his groove. He joked with the band, sweated, snarled, and sang with a passion and intensity not seen in years. He performed bluesy raw versions of classics, like That's All Right, Heartbreak Hotel, Lottie Miss Claudie, and Blue Suede Shoes, plus newer material. For the stand-up segments, Elvis, clad in that iconic black leather outfit, performed high-energy, choreographed by Jaime Rogers, versions of songs like Guitar Man, which became the framing theme, Trouble, and Jailhouse Rock on a stark boxing ring-like stage. He looked incredible, lean, dangerous, magic. He commanded the stage with electrifying presence. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If the special bombed, if critics panned it, if audiences didn't respond to this resurrected rocker image, Elvis's career as a relevant musical force would likely be over. He would be permanently relegated to the nostalgia circuit or the Hollywood backlot. It was a make-or-break moment broadcast to the entire nation. The special, simply titled Elvis, aired on December 3, 1968. It was a sensation. It captured a massive share of the television audience, reportedly over 40% of viewers that night. Critics raved. It wasn't just a TV show, it was an event. It reminded everyone why Elvis was the king in the first place. The power, the charisma, the voice, the raw sexuality, it was all there revitalized. The success was immediate and God. The single, If I Can Dream, shot up the charts. It paved the way for his triumphant return to live performing in Las Vegas the following year, and led to some of his best studio work in years, including the legendary Memphis sessions that produced hits like Suspicious Minds and In the Ghetto. But it all hinged on taking that massive risk, defying the safe path, trusting a young producer's vision and putting his entire legacy on the line in front of millions, clad in black leather. Failure was not an option, but it was a very real possibility. Number 1, joining the army, putting the kingdom on hold. This is perhaps the most unbelievable risk of them all, happening at the absolute zenith of his initial fame. It's late 1957, early 1958. Elvis Presley isn't just a singer, he's a cultural earthquake. Heartbreak Hotel, Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog, Love Me Tender, Jailhouse Rock, all shook up, hit after hit, has redefined music. His electrifying, hip-swiveling performances on TV caused national scandals. His movies were box office gold. He was arguably the most famous person on the planet, a symbol of youth, rebellion, and the raw energy of rock and roll. He was making millions, a staggering amount for the time. Then, Uncle Sam came calling. Elvis received his draft notice from the U.S. Army in December 1957. Think about the timing. This wasn't like a star taking a break today. There was no internet, no social media to keep fans constantly engaged. Out of sight could literally mean out of mind, especially in the fast-moving world of popular music he himself had accelerated. The risk was enormous, almost unimaginable. What would happen to his career during 2 years of military service? Would his fans, mostly screaming teenagers, still be there when he got back? Would the music scene have moved on completely? Rock and roll was still young. Maybe it was just a fad that would burn out. Could someone else take his place? Could anyone take his place? There were options. Elvis was such a huge star. Discussions reportedly took place about him serving in special services, the entertainment branch of the military. This would have allowed him to continue performing, perhaps do shows for the troops, essentially maintaining his public profile while fulfilling his service obligation. Many stars before and since have taken this route. It seemed like the logical, career-preserving choice. But Elvis, heavily guided by Colonel Parker, who saw a PR opportunity, made a different decision. He chose to serve as a regular soldier, a GI just like any other draftee. No special treatment. He would do basic training, get assigned a standard military poctacial specialty, he ended up driving tanks, and be shipped overseas. Parker likely calculated that this move would reshape Elvis's image from rebellious rocker to patriotic young American, potentially winning over older audiences and critics who had previously condemned him. It was a massive PR gamble, layered on top of the career gamble. On March 24, 1958, Elvis Presley, serial number 53,310,761, was inducted into the U.S. Army at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. The famous images of him getting his hair cut from the signature pompadour to a regulation buzz cut flashed around the world. It was a visual symbol of the king temporarily abdicating his throne. He did basic training at Fort Hood, Texas, and was later stationed with the 3rd Armored Division in Freiburg, West Germany, from October 1958 until March 1960. He earned the rank of sergeant. By all accounts, he served honorably and tried to fit in, though obviously his presence caused a constant stir. His mother, Gladys, died suddenly in August 1958 while he was on leave after basic training, a devastating personal blow that occurred under the shadow of his service commitment. While he was away, Colonel Parker and RCA Records kept the flame alive by strategically releasing recordings Elvis had made before his induction. They spaced out singles like Hard-Headed Woman, One Night, I Got Stung, Gack Now and Then There's a Fool Such as I, and A Big Hunk of Love, ensuring he stayed on the charts and radio. They also released albums compiled from pre-Army material and movie soundtracks. It was a carefully managed operation to prevent him from disappearing entirely. But still, 2 years is a long time. Music was changing. Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper died in a plane crash in 1959. New teen idols were emerging. The raw edge of early rock was softening slightly. Would Elvis return as a relic? Would the connection be broken? When Sergeant Elvis Presley was honorably discharged on March 5, 1960, the world held its breath. His return was a major media event. He soon recorded new material, including the massive hits Stuck on You and It's Now or Never, proving the voice and the magic were still there, perhaps even matured. His appearance on Frank Sinatra's TV special showcased a slightly more conservative, tuxedo-clad Elvis, signaling the image shift Parker had aimed for. The gamble, in terms of public image and immediate career continuation, paid off. Serving as a regular G, I earned him respect and broadened his appeal. But it came at the cost of halting his explosive musical momentum right at its peak and setting the stage for the next risky phase, the shift away from rock and roll dominance towards Hollywood. Choosing the path of a regular soldier over special services was a profound risk that could have easily derailed the most spectacular career in popular music history before it had even reached its second act.